Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If we could all take our seats, please.
Incredible.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could ask you to take your seats, please. For those of you online, I know you're already seated, but those in the room, take some motivating. We would like to begin our session. If I could ask you all to take a seat, please. Tempus fugit. Tempus tu fugit. All right, good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the 30th session of the Committee on Sustainable Energy. I am the director of the Sustainable Energy Sub-Program. Before I hand it to our chair, I'd like to run us through a few housekeeping items, if I may. There are several things that are quite important. For those of you who are online, we are using the Zoom platform. And I would like to note for you that there are a number of commands that are extremely important. If you can go to the next slide, please. If you look through at the bottom of your screen, there is a navigation bar. And on the left-hand side, you can mute or unmute your microphone and video. We find that it's actually easier in terms of bandwidth to kill the video. And we would ask that everybody mute their microphones so that there's not extraneous noise on the line. We do encourage you to be actively engaged. So please do raise your hands. I'll explain how to do that in just a moment. But we also want to have an active chat discussion going on. So if you look on your the bottom of your navigation line, you have this text chat, and you can follow the conversation as it goes along. You have a list of participants. You can see who's online at any given time. If you want to raise your hand in order to request the floor, there's a click on that raise hand sign. And then, probably the most important, this is being interpreted into the 3 languages of UNECE, English, French, and Russian. So you can choose your interpretation on the far right side. So that's for everybody who's online, and it may be for those of you who are in the room. If you want to follow the chat, that would be a useful thing to do. If you can go to the next slide, please. All of the documents, parliamentary documents and room documents, have been posted to the website. I'm not going to read out that long list, but you can see where it can be found. You also have a session structure. It lists out the whole plan for the week of all of the sessions. It's room document informal number 6. After the session, if the speakers agree, we will be posting all of the presentations. There is an annotated provisional agenda, which is item number 136. We will be approving that agenda with a minor modification shortly. And then there will be an advanced draft copy of the report. Now, this has been prepared, obviously, with what we know so far, and it will be updated progressively as the meeting progresses. And so by the time we get to the end of the meeting on Friday, we will be able to approve that report. If you can go to the next slide, please. So here is the overview. We will start this morning with the opening the agenda. This afternoon, we have 3 panels on methane, buildings, and resources. On tomorrow, from 10 to 1, we have subsidies and carbon prices and just transition. In the afternoon, from 3 till 6, we've got 2 separate panels, electricity as a driver for transformations and carbon capture, use, and storage. On the 24th, then we have 2 additional panels, scaling up hydrogen and energy and resources as services. Those are really all of the substantive parts of our meeting. In the afternoon of the 24th, Friday, we will have to go through all of the formalities of mandates and approvals and documents, and then approval of the conclusions and recommendations and the report. It's the usual format that we use. I will say it's a real pleasure to see so many people here physically in the room. Vaccinations are working, so we encourage everybody to go off and get them. If you can go to the next slide, please. Without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to our chair, Mr. Jürgen Keinhorst. Mr. Keinhorst, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. Madam Executive Secretary, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to this 30th meeting of the Committee on Sustainable Energy. The theme of this session is concrete actions to attain energy for sustainable development. This year is a critical year for energy challenges and agendas, as we shall hear throughout the session of the committee. So the theme is very much on target. Our meeting takes place as the Secretary General's high-level dialogue on energy in New York is shaping up for this Friday, and as countries prepare to convene in Glasgow, Scotland for the COP26. I would like to call this session to order, starting with adoption of the agenda as a first order of business. So I don't have the hammer now, but please consider it as opened. A draft agenda was distributed, as Scott has already mentioned, in preparation for this meeting. And if there are no comments, then the agenda is adopted as proposed. Please, Secretariat, are there any comments or flags?
There is one change that I would like to bring to your attention. We have set aside time from 11:45 until noon for a presentation of awards in recognition of the 30th session of the Committee on Sustainable Energy. That's the only change to the agenda, is to insert that into the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
In the previous meeting, we will also do the conclusions and recommendations after each agenda item, just to remind that this is an effective way. We have already realized this morning in the bureau meeting that we have a very full agenda, so hopefully we'll manage to do so, but at least this is the intention to do. So we have been strongly influenced, as you all know, by the COVID pandemic since its really burst on the world scene in 2020. COVID-19 has also taught us a new ways of working, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the expert groups and especially the Secretariat that they have really well managed to deal with this situation. We had a lot of additional outreach, a lot of communication. Therefore, you could even imagine that and perceive it as a way how we could improve our way to work under the committee, and especially with the expert groups, and to have a wider community dealing with our business. So there is a chance. But on the other side, it's absolutely clear, and I think all here in the room, they perceive it as a big issue, that it's now possible again to meet in person, and we do all hope for those not be in a position to be here in Geneva this morning, respectively this afternoon, that this will be the normal in the upcoming months again, once are all vaccinated, and we have overcome the most distortions due to the COVID-19. So having said this, once again, I would like to thank to all who have managed this in this elegant way, and I hope that we can continue in the original format, but taking all the new aspects we learned and the ways of cooperating via video conferences for the future. Our current strategic priorities in the committee will be confirmed during the course of our meeting. First, to mention sustainable resource management, resource production, transformation and use, if properly managed, can ensure beneficial social and environmental outcomes. ECE is extending the United Nations framework classification for resources to a full-fledged management system for resources, the so-called United Nations Resource Management System, UNRMS. The objective is to develop, disseminate, and deploy them both. The sub-program has engaged with the Secretary General's initiative on extractive industries and is working with partners on supply of critical raw materials. We anticipate continued strong emphasis in this area as ECE has proposed a robust 5-point action plan for sustainable resource management. The second priority is on methane management, and this was just recently on a very high level before the New York meeting to become an initiative, as reducing methane emissions offers significant climate change benefits, especially in the near term. So it will be discussed in New York as well. And we do hope, and we also hope for the support of the member states that the international decade for methane management at the United Nations General Assembly is approved. The third priority area is on carbon neutrality, a first step in meeting the climate change challenge. Work is in that area designed to help the member states to plan to do so, move to carbon neutrality in the energy sector in accordance with their national plans, namely the NDCs. ECE member states recognize that they take different views regarding the use of fossil fuels, with carbon capture and storage as an example, and the use of nuclear power. We are aware of these different approaches, and we are dealing with them. It is increasingly clear that achieving carbon neutrality while ensuring a just transition will require an open technology strategy where nothing is excluded from the beginning. I would like to add personally a note that especially in our region, we should also put a stronger emphasis on energy efficiency and energy productivity. So we will have opportunities in the course of our committee meeting to discuss it, and some very promising initiatives supported by member states and also taken up by the expert groups. The fourth priority is in renewable energy, and the work involves helping member states accelerate the uptake of renewables. The issue of market design and system level analysis, and mainly system integration of renewables, are the critical important points under this item. The fifth priority area is on gases. Natural gas is considered by certain ECE member states as a transition fuel to a low carbon economy. Our experts are working to develop normative instruments to ensure that its role in the transition is in line with the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement. Decarbonization can proceed through deployment of a hybrid energy system that uses a full spectrum of gases. So natural gas, low carbon, decarbonized gases, hydrogen, and that closely coordinates the gas and power sectors. In recent days, we know about the challenges even for the next winter due to the increase of the gas prices. So you see, it's also an interesting point for the agenda to discuss how the price system is and which reliability is for the different forms of energy. And maybe we have also an opportunity to touch upon this point in the course of this committee. The sixth priority is focused on guidelines to ensure that investments are aligned with the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement. While it is expected that the share of fossil fuels in the global energy mix will decline and their production will become more efficient, experts should focus on investment guidelines aiming at the neutralization of their CO2 emission and avoiding stranded assets for the future. So what we can see in the region that there are quite often very good plans already for decarbonization by the mid of the century, but the main challenge is how to mobilize the necessary finance by internal resources, but as well by international resources. And with this agenda item, I think we have a very important point where we can support member states to work on related strategies, how to bring these decarbonization strategies into implementation. The seventh priority is on high performance buildings. ECE's high performance buildings initiatives aim to move the dial on buildings energy performance, greenhouse gas emissions, and indoor air quality. improve the global supply chain for the construction businesses, and accelerates the uptake of high-performance best practices. 8, the final current priority falls under the umbrella of the Pathways program, which most of you are well aware it's a continuous priority over the last years. We will present this later this morning. The sub-program has been actively engaged with the member states in exploring options they have in attaining their commitments and objectives under the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement. Looking forward, it is clear that the UNECE is an effective platform for achieving actionable outcomes. We bring North America, Europe, Central Asia, the Caucasus, Israel, and Turkey around the table to explore politically relevant subjects at a technical level. Achieving consensus among this gathering of nations with the support of a broad and deep community of experts is a major contribution by UNECE. Our processes involve dialogue, analysis, results, consensus, deployment, and impact. Going forward, we must use this platform to its best effect. We have been engaged with member states since our last meeting to develop the strategic review. That document sets the stage for us to take real action on energy for sustainable development. There are 16 distinct areas that have been agreed during the consultations, but I will not list them all as this would fill the morning. So they fall into 4 distinct categories. First, reducing the environmental footprint of the energy system. Secondly, the supporting member states in their transitions to a sustainable future. Third, ensuring sustainable management of resources. And fourth, assisting member states in exploring alternative approaches to attaining their commitments. As the list of activities is long, I simply would like to note that the committee and the expert groups will need to prioritize and optimize these in line with available resources. As they all significant areas of opportunity, member states will need to give carefully thought to making resources available. And I think we should take advantage of this committee meeting to get indications from the member states on their priorities, as we consider our role as supporting the member states in their work, and therefore priority setting is key, and we should reflect in our work the political priorities by our member states in the UNECE. Our parent body, the Economic Commission for Europe, had its 69th session last April on the theme of circular economy, and the energy subprogram made significant contributions to the Commission's agenda. We are now tasked to follow up on decisions emerging from that session related to sustainable resource management, high performance buildings, gases, and both subsidies and carbon pricing. We will be exploring these topics throughout this session. Along with the other ECU subprograms, the Bureau of the Committee on Sustainable Energy was asked to suggest a possible theme for the 70th session of the Commission that will take place next April, and in April 23. And we have suggested for that mobility. In closing, I would like to refer briefly to the issue of resilience, a word that is on everyone's lip. The climate is changing around us. The absolute violence of weather can be extraordinary. Resilience can fall into several categories. There's physical resilience. How do we build better to create reliable, flexible, and climate resilient energy infrastructure that can withstand the more and more damaging extreme weather manifestations? How do we strengthen energy systems resilience? How can energy systems deliver in remote locations and environmental fragile areas of the world? There's the economic resilience. How do we engineer a timely energy transition that delivers growth and jobs? How do we leverage the power? And for these activities related to mobilize the resources, what I mentioned with this financing issue. And the third one is the social dimension of resilience. As we know, there are a lot of change and we have a lot of areas, for example, completely depending on fossil energies. And we have to find solutions, or we have to support such findings for solutions, how to deal with the situation for the people living in these areas, that they also are profiting from the transition, so that this becomes a win-win situation for all. So this is a very, very broad agenda for our committee with a lot of cross-cutting issues. And therefore this exercise to further cooperate also with partner committees, for example, housing in the field of energy efficiency, to give just one example, will become more and more relevant to fulfill this task to come to a sustainable energy system in our region and to contribute also to the global debate. With this, I would like to close, and I would wish all of us a very successful committee meeting. And I now would like to give the Executive Secretary the floor for the opening remarks from the Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30th session of the Committee on Sustainable Energy. And at the beginning, I would like to share the Jürgen's feelings that it's beautiful to see the full room after so long time. I see ambassador, I see head of energy agency, I see people from overseas, and many more are connected online. So it's great, because this is our business, to convene people. So, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this session is concrete actions to attain energy for sustainable development. The last year has seen numerous extreme weather events. The recent IPCC report puts our situation in very stark terms. Given the continuing acceleration of climate change and the decimation of so many species, we are facing a code red for life. The world is not on track to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement. We are beyond late in acting in a serious way. Those realities make the theme for this session of the committee all the more pertinent. It is imperative that we take tangible steps to secure energy for sustainable development. Our objectives are achievable, but we need focus and commitment. We can do this, we must do this, and we will do this. Energy remains the critical factor. It underpins quality of life. It is the source of most greenhouse gas emissions. It can be transformed in ways that address our challenges and meet our objectives with integrated solutions. Two recent developments merit our attention. The first is the spiking prices for energy in Europe. These result from market balances that have been stressed on the supply side, on available storage capacity, and on the demand side. As economies recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, it appears we are reverting the previous patterns rather than setting a new course. Affordability and resilience remain priorities for energy markets. And that brings me to the second development. A recent drop-off in renewable energy production led to increased electricity generation from fossil units, notably coal-fired power. In terms of priorities, keeping the lights on remains number one. This Friday, Secretary General will host the high-level dialogue on energy. 5 thematic reports have been issued to help frame the discussion. The first theme is energy access. The summary report observes that universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services by 2030 is a prerequisite for improving quality of life. Universal access to energy is integral to the transition to an inclusive, just, sustainable, secure, and not net zero emissions energy system in line with the Paris Agreement. Progress on access must accelerate. The second theme is energy transmission. The energy system is being affected by changes in climate and energy policy, financing, continuous technological advancement and shifts in energy supply and demand. A transformed energy sector can enhance security, inclusiveness, and sustainability, but the transition needs to accelerate and cannot be limited to small incremental steps. Transition must be transformational and system overhaul, deploying all available technologies. Ambitions and targeted actions are needed now and over the coming decades. The third theme, ladies and gentlemen, is inclusive, just energy transitions. Energy underpins all the SDGs. Transforming the world's energy systems will create new jobs, advance gender equality, empower people, communities, and societies. A just and inclusive energy transition will enhance human well-being, health, and capabilities, increase resilience, and drive innovation towards a sustainable society at all levels, while also driving huge investments. Although transition pathways will vary based on the individual needs of countries and regions, all pathways must be just and inclusive. The fourth theme is innovation, technology, and data. It calls to align international action. There are persistent challenges for energy, innovation, technology deployment, and data management that need to be addressed. The fifth theme, finance and investment, explored the urgent need for clean energy investment at scale. Mobilizing investment at scale will require concerted policy interventions, public finance, and private initiatives. Each of these 5 issues is accompanied by an extensive set of recommendations that merit close attention. Soon after the high-level dialogue in November, Glasgow will host COP26, as we know, with 4 objectives. First, to secure global net zero by mid-century and keep 1.5 degrees within reach. Current trajectories take us to much higher temperature increases than 1.5 degrees. Countries are therefore being asked to come forward with ambitious 2030 emissions reductions targets that align with reaching net zero by the middle of the century. Second objective is to adapt the climate change to protect communities and natural habitats. Climate change will continue even if we reduce emissions with devastating effects. Third is to mobilize finance. To deliver on the first 2 goals, developed countries must mobilize at least $100 billion in climate finance per year by 2030. The fourth and final objective is we must work together to deliver. Collective action holds the greatest promise. COP26 will seek to finalize the detailed rules that make the Paris Agreement operational and to accelerate action for foster collaboration among governments, businesses, and civil society. I believe you will find the work of this committee resonates throughout the high-level dialogue on energy and the preparations for COP26. So, what are the concrete actions that countries can take? I believe that the bold action in just 3 areas can deliver tangible near-term outcomes and in longer term achieve the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement. Country commitments are sought to achieve superior performance in buildings, address growing concentrations of methane in the atmosphere, and modernize resource management. The call of the commitment trifecta you have received makes the case for these actions. There is also an informal push to pivot document, a companion to the commitment trifecta. It sets out 3 longer-term actions to achieve the 2030 agenda while mitigating climate change. First is achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. Second, ensure a just transition to remove social obstacles to real transformative action. And third, enable a hydrogen ecosystem. I use the word ecosystem here for a reason. It reflects the reality that a sustainable future will comprise a full panoply of sustainable produced and used electrons and molecules, which will form the basis of the energy services the world will require. So this is why we call on countries to consider these near-term and longer-term actions in their commitments and plans. They are pragmatic and they meet countries' needs comprehensively. We look forward to hearing your actions and plans this morning. Let me also mention the great success we have had working with Nexus activities across the UNECE sub-programs. In the last years, cross-sectoral activities focus on sustainable use of natural resources, sustainable and smart cities for all ages, sustainable mobility and smart connectivity, and finally measuring and monitoring progress towards the SDGs. And that work will continue, but we also have cross-cutting areas of opportunity on my favorite circular economy and circular carbon economy. The latter brings to bear our work on carbon capture and storage and on hydrogen. Further activities on digitalization, mobility, resilience, the built environment and water are also under discussion. Any and all of these topics will require the support of this committee. The energy sub-program is succeeding with its mandate to support member states in their delivery on the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement. I note that we continue to depend heavily on the availability of experts from all stakeholder groups and, of course, on extra budgetary resources. The strategic review you will discuss at this session envisages a wide spectrum of activities. In addition to the current activities and priorities, it outlines 16 areas for consideration by the committee and its subsidiaries. As you implement the outcomes of the strategic review, I would ask all member states to consider which areas of activity you can support with extra budgetary resources. We have an enormous opportunity to make tangible progress towards our several and collective objectives, but we need your support to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the final topic, which is the 30th meeting of this committee. I would like to thank Secretariat who prepared a review of the 30 years of sustainable energy activities. You can find this publication beyond there in the room, and it's beautiful review of 30 years of activities. Secretariat has done so with the strong support of previous chairs and staff, notably previous director, Mr. Klaus Brando, who is with us today. So thank you, Klaus, to be with us, and welcome back. By the way, the publication says that the first session of our commission, UNECE, was in May 1947, and it mandated this committee to conduct activities performed by so far European coal organizations. So we have some history and we have some legacy to deliver. The document highlights the value of UNECE for member states throughout the years. As your chair has said, our achievements are notable because we are able to reach consensus among countries on politically relevant topics and bring key actors to one table. UNECE is a regional commission, but we are the UN with our convening power and our capability to develop instruments, deploy programs, and deliver results at scale. The instruments we produce matter a lot and are used widely. Early on, the committee dealt with issues such as energy security, subsidies and pricing, coal and gas, and more recently in supporting energy system transitions, reducing the environmental footprint of energy and managing resources sustainably. UNECE has a strong value proposition for its member states, given the specific makeup of our membership and our institutional capabilities for developing normative instruments. Our expert communities have broad, substantive and innovative capabilities across the range of energy topics. The sub-program can mobilize countries, the private sector, organizations, civil society and academia to work towards meaningful outcomes. And we will bring all these advantages to bear on our current objective, which is to help to ensure that energy makes an optimal, enduring contribution to countries' economies, to the quality of life, and to responsible environmental stewardship. And we will partner with all relevant stakeholders to enhance reliability, affordability, and sustainability of current and future energy systems. As a part of the 30th anniversary, an extended online event will be organized before the end of the year to recognize the contributions from all stakeholder communities, and you will be advised of that event in due course. For today, we would like to recognize individuals in 11 specific areas without whom we wouldn't have achieved what we did. We will pause briefly at the end of the high-level segment this morning to acknowledge their contributions. I would like to thank all of you for your kind attention, and I wish you great deliberations today, and I'm looking forward to be with you here. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Madam Executive Secretary. And then I would like to proceed with the agenda. Scott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Agenda item number 2 is on the election of officers. As you know, we have a cycle of 2 years for Bureau members, and we do them in not all the same time. So in any given year, some of the terms will expire. So there were certain Bureau members whose term was to expire at the close of this session. Those include Bosnia and Herzegovina, Germany, Georgia, Ireland, Italy, Poland, Switzerland, and the Russian Federation. COVID has made it very challenging for us to manage and conduct online elections. And in fact, our expert group on resource management put in place a machinery that we found quite attractive, which was to extend the existing bureau so that the elections could take place in a following year. So we are asking the committee to extend the term of those bureau members to the close of the 31st session next year. And they would then appoint replacements as appropriate for the position of vice chairs on an interim basis. Those appointments would then be confirmed at the close of, during the course of the 31st session with proper elections. So the proposition is that Mr. Alexei Kulapin will replace Mr. Alexander Tolparov, Ms. Yelena Simovic from Serbia, and Mr. Jared Daniels from the United States are stepping down. Already elected until the end of the 31st session would be Armenia, Kazakhstan, Serbia, Ukraine, and the United States. As Mr. Jared Daniels is stepping down and Ms. Simovic is stepping down, it is possible that those countries would wish to appoint replacements. So that is the proposition before you, is rather than conducting elections, to agree to extend the terms of those whose terms were expiring with one specific case. If that is agreed, and I see no objections in the room, and I see none online, Mr. Chair, I think we have the agreement. If we could show the conclusion for agenda item 2. Oh, here we are. Sorry, go back to that one. This is the Bureau. I've just listed them off. I will note that the chairs of the subsidiary bodies ex officio are members of the Bureau. And then we have the chair, the Bureau as it's indicated on the screen. Now we can go to the next slide. So we would like to show to you the conclusion that would be related to this session. If you could bring that up, please. Bear with us as we do so. And we need to scroll down to the election of officers. This is from the report, and what we've done is we've taken the conclusions and recommendations and pasted them into the report. All of this will be updated and modified as we go along. So what we have is paragraph number 15. On the basis of this decision, the committee elected on an interim basis until the end of the 31st session, Mr. Kulapen as vice chair, and extended the terms of Mr. Jürgen Keinhorst as chair, Mr. Tigran Melkonyan, Mr. Admir Softik, Mr. David Cialabashvili, Mr. James Gannon, Mr. Gilberto Dielucci, Mr. Kairat Rachimov, Mr. Pavel Picos, Mr. Jean-Christophe Fueg, and Mr. Yaroslav Demchenkov as vice chairs to serve until the end of the 31st session of the committee. Mr. Sergio Garriba is invited as an observer to the Bureau. The committee underscored the desirability for the sake of continuing to ensuring continuity of the Bureau that not all officers be elected at the same time. If that conclusion is acceptable, and I'm surveying both Zoom and the floor, it seems that that is the case. And I can turn the floor back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Then we can turn now to agenda item 3. This is a high-level segment of our committee meeting. So the intention is to take this as an opportunity to get some inspiration from some of the member states on their commitments regarding the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement. And this fits very well, as we have heard. We have this week meetings in New York on energy on the highest level. So that could be quite inspiring as well for the run up to the COP in Glasgow. And I'm very excited to hear contributions from member states. And I do also hope that we will find an opportunity, as we cannot hear from all member states, that there might be some further reflections following afterwards, which can be taken on board. And as said in my opening remarks, I would also very much appreciate if we could get some guidance on our work here in the committee for us as a bureau, as well as for the expert groups, so that we can really be supportive on the top priorities for the member states. So I would also like to refer to the document ECE Energy /2021/4. Later in the conclusions, we will go into this again, but now I would like to invite our guests for their interventions. To start with a colleague from Germany, the ambassador here in Geneva, Dr. Hans-Peter Jugel.
Very much, Chair, Mr. Keinhorst, dear Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen. In view of the dwindling time available to meet the Paris targets, we are in a key year for energy and climate policy, with crucial decisions to be taken in the run-up to COP26 in November, as the Executive Secretary pointed out. It is very encouraging that more and more countries commit to the net zero target 2050, and it is necessary that more countries follow this pathway. However, after the goal setting, the next challenge is to come up with consistent and realistic step-by-step plans how to get there. This year, the G7 countries have sent a powerful message with a joint commitment to swiftly make unabated coal history. The coal phase out in Germany is legally set for 2038 at the latest, with an option for closures 3 years earlier. The coal phase out is a crucial and necessary step we need to take in order to decarbonize our economies by mid-century and keep 1.5 degrees within reach. Furthermore, in May, the German government decided to amend a revision of our climate protection law, a milestone of German climate protection policy. With this reform, we are increasing our 2030 targets significantly, aiming to reduce emissions overall by at least 65% compared to 1990. And we commit to reaching net greenhouse gas neutrality already by 2045, 5 years earlier than the EU as a whole. The energy sector, whose transformation has been very successful in the past, will contribute largely to this increase of ambition. For example, in 2020, renewables covered roughly 45% of gross electricity consumption. Our previous goal is to increase this proportion of total electricity consumption covered by renewable energy sources to 65% by 2030. But in the light of our new and ambitious targets, we have to speed up on the energy transition, implying both an expansion of renewable energies as well as the exploitation of efficiency potentials. It is important to note that Germany does not see nuclear power as a suitable way to achieve the climate protection goals. With renewable energies, cheaper, safe, and sustainable energy technologies are available. Let me also point out that clean energy transition is not only an issue of fighting climate change. It is also a huge business opportunity for our countries, citizens, and companies, as well as a significant chance to improve quality of life in our societies. To realize this economic potential for the benefit of our citizens, international cooperation is key. In this sense, the federal government has initiated many projects alongside the activities of the private sector. As one element, we intend to provide almost 20 million euro for an energy efficiency project to be implemented in the UNECE region. The project aims to improve the performance of the buildings industry in delivering products needed for high-performance buildings. The UNECE program will be supported under the International Climate Initiative. The project is currently in the preparatory phase. Climate change mitigation also means opportunity. With this in mind, we look forward to intensifying regional cooperation, especially in the fields of the development of sustainable energy pathways, the expansion of renewable energies, as well as the exploitation of efficiency potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Then I would like to continue with the General Director from the Russian Energy Agency, Alexei Kulapin. You have the floor.
Большое спасибо. Уважаемый господин Фостер, уважаемые коллеги, позвольте поблагодарить за оказанное мне доверие и избрание в качестве члена Бюро Комитета по устойчивой энергетике Европейской экономической комиссии ООН. Комитет традиционно является одной из ключевых площадок для обсуждения путей мирового энергетического развития, обмена мнениями и выработки согласованных позиций. Для меня большая честь стать его частью. Сегодняшнее заседание комитета приобретает особую важность, поскольку проходит накануне диалога высокого уровня по энергетике Генеральной Ассамблеи ООН. Уверен, что результаты нашей работы в предстоящие 3 дня внесут вклад в мероприятие Генассамблеи. Российская Федерация всесторонне поддерживает международные усилия по устойчивому развитию энергетики и обеспечению энергетической безопасности. Проводимая политика особенно важна в контексте реализации Парижского соглашения по климату, поскольку именно от обеспечения всеобщего доступа к современным энергетическим услугам, повышения экологической эффективности энергетического сектора во многом зависит решение климатических задач. Обеспечение всеобщего доступа к недорогим и надежным, устойчивым и современным источникам энергии должно оставаться основным приоритетом Комитета по устойчивой энергетике ЕЭК ООН. Россия всегда выступала за формирование глобального энергетического баланса на основе экономических, социальных и экологических факторов и с использованием всех доступных видов энергоресурсов, включая традиционные источники энергии, гидроэнергетику, водород и энергию атома. Мы выступаем против искусственных преференциальных условий и инструментов недобросовестной конкуренции в энергетической отрасли. Я подчеркну, что наша страна всецело поддерживает диверсификацию поставок энергоресурсов, но она должна строиться на рыночных условиях, а не носить политизированный характер, как это часто происходит сегодня. Торговые войны, рост протекционизма на энергетических рынках – все это создает дополнительную неопределенность и нестабильность в энергетике и препятствует достижению глобальной цели обеспечения всех доступными энергоресурсами. Ископаемые источники энергии тоже могут быть экологически нейтральными с учетом развития и применения современных технологий по улавливанию и утилизации выбросов. А принятие мер адаптации к изменениям климата позволит обеспечить необходимый уровень экологической безопасности при их добыче и транспортировке. Для обеспечения всеобщего доступа к энергии, повышения экологичности отраслей топливно-энергетического комплекса и решения климатических задач в центре внимания международных усилий, на наш взгляд, должно оставаться развитие новых технологий, способных повысить эффективность, доступность и надежность энергоснабжения. Энергетический баланс в стране, в Российской Федерации изменение климата находится в поле зрения на самом высоком уровне. И наша страна была участником Киотского протокола, а в 2016 году Россия подписала, и в 2019 году приняла Парижское соглашение по климату. Для достижения целей Парижского соглашения в ноябре 2020 года президентом нашей страны был подписан указ о сокращении выбросов парниковых газов в России. Задачи по надежному снабжению энергоресурсами внутренних потребителей и обеспечению вклада России в глобальную энергобезопасность также закреплены в одном из ключевых отраслевых документов стратегического планирования Российской Федерации. Это доктрина энергетической безопасности, которая утверждена президентом России. Россия исходит из того, что пока новые источники энергии не будут способны в полной мере обеспечивать бесперебойное энергоснабжение, природный газ, в том числе и сжиженный природный газ, как наиболее чистый энергоресурс целесообразно использовать как переходное топливо в глобальной энергетической трансформации. В соответствии с энергетической стратегией России к 2035 году наша страна рассчитывает увеличить производство сжиженного природного газа до 140 миллионов тонн и занять до 20% глобального рынка СПГ. Большое внимание уделяется развитию газовой инфраструктуры внутри страны, в том числе сетевой газификации природным газом. Развивается также структура газомоторного топлива. В этой связи я хотел бы особо отметить и поблагодарить секретариат комитета за реализацию проекта по расширению использования природного газа на транспорте. Мы с нетерпением ждем презентацию его результатов в широкой общественности, которая планируется уже в октябре этого года. Осознавая свою роль как гаранта мировой энергетической безопасности, Россия готова и далее развивать взаимовыгодное сотрудничество со всеми заинтересованными сторонами по вопросам реализации совместных энергетических проектов, включая проекты в сфере сжиженного природного газа. В целом, сегодня баланс потребления энергоресурсов и выработки электроэнергии в России уже соответствует логике низкоуглеродного будущего. Более половины внутреннего потребления приходится на газ, а в структуре производства электроэнергии доля низкоуглеродных источников сегодня составляет более 80%, а полностью безуглеродных – более 40%. И в них важное место занимает атомная генерация и большая гидрогенерация. Мы убеждены в том, что данные виды энергии должны рассматриваться как безэмиссионные. И уже на сегодняшний день по доле низкоэмиссионных технологий в генерации энергии Россия опережает большинство стран. Разделяя усилия мирового сообщества, наша страна ведет целенаправленную работу по сокращению выбросов парниковых газов в топливно-энергетическом комплексе. Мы наращиваем компетенции в возобновляемой энергетике и развиваем технологии производства водорода с прицелом на его использование внутри страны и для поставок на экспорт. Технологии CCUS, накопителей энергии, стимулируем развитие экологически чистого транспорта, стимулируем энергоэффективные практики, а также переход компаний топливно-энергетического комплекса на принципы наилучших доступных технологий. Россия планирует внести свой вклад и в развитие водородной энергетики. Для достижения этой цели правительством России утверждена дорожная карта и концепция развития водородной энергетики. Ведется разработка технологической стратегии и ведется разработка комплексной программы развития отрасли низкоуглеродной водородной энергетики. По нашим оценкам, потенциальные объемы экспорта водорода из России на мировой рынок могут составить от 10 до 20% от объемов рынка. Для этого в России есть необходимые конкурентные преимущества. Это географическая близость к потенциальным потребителям, базовая транспортная инфраструктура и научный задел. Особо хочу подчеркнуть, что Россия считает важным и своевременным запуск проекта «Устойчивое производство водорода в регионах ЕЭК ООН» и его роль в развитии водородной экосистемы экспортного потенциала, финансируемой за счет российского добровольного взноса. Также надеемся, что в октябре этого года проект будет одобрен и комитет приступит к его реализации. В классическом понимании самым зеленым из источников энергии является возобновляемое. И в России вместе с развитием большой гидроэнергетики реализуется политика расширения использования генерации на основе энергии солнца и ветра, как в промышленных масштабах, так и для использования в частных домах. И это важно для энергоснабжения труднодоступных и изолированных энергорайонов. И это также важно для освоения технологий с прицелом на экспорт. С каждым годом ввод новой генерации на основе возобновляемых источников энергии увеличивается в разы. И это стало возможным благодаря реализации программы государственной поддержки обеспечения доходности проектов возобновляемой энергетики, работающей с 2014 года. В результате в прошлом году объемы ввода новой мощности возобновляемых источников энергии в России превысили объемы ввода традиционной генерации. В текущем году действие программы было продлено до 2035 года, после чего ожидается... В текущем году действие программы было продлено до 2035 года, после чего ожидается, что отрасль уйдет от субсидирования. При этом планируется, что в период с 2023 по 2035 годы будет введено значительное количество возобновляемой генерации. Механизмом, который позволит учесть положительные экологические эффекты низкоуглеродной энергетики, являются сертификаты происхождения энергии. В настоящее время в нашей стране уже разработан проект закона, определяющий механизм формирования, зачета и обращения таких сертификатов. Мы рассчитываем обеспечить зарубежное признание такого механизма, в том числе и признание компенсации углеродоемкости продукции низкоуглеродными сертификатами. Уважаемые коллеги, в России проделан большой пласт работы в области противодействия изменениям климата. И такая же большая работа ведется в части повестки устойчивого энергетического развития. Впереди нас ждет важнейшее событие. Это конференция РКИК ООН в Глазго. И наша страна подходит к ней подготовленной. В этом году в России принят закон об ограничении выбросов парниковых газов, который является важным шагом к созданию условий для снижения крупнейшими российскими предприятиями углеродного следа, в том числе посредством модернизации производственных мощностей и привлечением устойчивых инвестиций. Утверждены цели и основные направления устойчивого, в том числе зеленого развития. Разрабатывается стратегия социально-экономического развития страны с низким уровнем выбросов парниковых газов на период до 2050 года. Ведется планомерная деятельность по адаптации экономики к энергопереходу. До конца года планируется завершить разработку сводного плана действий по адаптации российской экономики к глобальному энергетическому переходу. По нашим оценкам, его реализация позволит обеспечить лидерство страны в глобальном энергетическом переходе и сформировать собственную повестку. Уважаемые коллеги, С учетом всех обозначенных мер в России обеспечивается достаточно зеленая структура топливно-энергетического комплекса с одной стороны, а с другой стороны обеспечивается устойчивость и безопасность энергетической системы. Уверен, что все реализуемые инициативы дадут дополнительный положительный эффект и позволят мировому сообществу внести свой вклад в достижение глобальных целей низкоуглеродного развития. Я благодарю вас за внимание.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koryapin. Then I would like to invite the ambassador to Montenegro, Mr. Milacek, please. You have the floor. No, is he not?
Is Mr. Milacek online? If not, I suggest that we continue and we'll see if we can get him connected later in the sequence.
Okay. Then I would like to invite Minister of State from Ireland, Mr. James Brown. Is he available in the room or?
No, he's online.
Yes.
Online, okay.
Good morning. In Ireland, we are committed to responding to climate change through our policies and legislation. The programme for government commits to a 51% reduction in overall greenhouse gas emissions over the next decade and to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. This is now legislated for in the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Amendment Bill. This legislation affirms Ireland's ambition to be a global leader in this field. Our National Action Plan sets targets to deliver 70% of Ireland's electricity from renewable sources by 2030, upgrade 500,000 homes to a building energy rating of B2 or equivalent by 2030, and to the installing of 600,000 renewable energy heat pumps within the same timeframe. We are now on an ambitious and irreversible journey away from fossil fuels to renewables. We have set ambitious targets for the decarbonisation of our built environment, and these form an integral part of Ireland's Climate Action Plan. And we are currently ramping up that ambition to achieve the reduction in emissions. One significant area we are doing this is in the nearly zero energy buildings, or NZEB, which now applies to all new buildings constructed in Ireland. Improving energy efficiency would improve the health and comfort of those living in dwellings, and ensure that whilst we achieve more energy efficient buildings, we also build healthy, sustainable and durable buildings suitable for the Irish climate, both today and into the future. As a result of NZEB, approximately 85% of new dwellings are currently installing heat pumps. In addition, our building regulations also require that where more than 25% of the surface area of an existing dwelling is renovated, the dwelling should achieve a building energy rating of at least B2. The World Health Organization has stated that air pollution is the new tobacco. Through these regulations, we have effectively eliminated solid fuel and oil boilers as heating sources. This will significantly improve air quality in the areas where these homes are built relative to traditional developments. As I mentioned, Ireland's Climate Action Plan sets a target to upgrade 500,000 homes to a building energy rating of B2 or equivalent by 2030, and to the installing of 600,000 renewable energy heat pumps within that time frame. This represents a very significant increase in both the number and depth of retrofit delivery over and above the current activity. For 2021, in total across government, €286.5 million has been committed to retrofit activity, including social housing. Retrofitting homes is a highly labour-intensive sector and can create high-quality, sustainable jobs in local communities right throughout the country. Increasing the numbers of homes retrofitted would also reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the residential sector, as well as making homes more comfortable and delivering health benefits. The ambition of the Climate Action Plan requires 950,000 electric vehicles on the road in Ireland by 2030. Ireland has recently implemented legislation to provide for electric vehicle recharging infrastructure in buildings and to facilitate more streamlined planning permits for this infrastructure. The lack of this infrastructure is a barrier to take up of electric vehicles and these measures aim to encourage this take-up. In order to achieve these ambitious targets, it is vital that our construction industry has the capacity and skills to deliver these. The NSEB Training Centre, currently in place in County Wexford and operated by the Waterford and Wexford Education and Training Board, is delivering upskilling courses and to date have trained well over 1,000 construction professionals. The training programme has been adapted as a result of the COVID pandemic, and key elements are now provided online. They are currently developing an exciting virtual reality training environment for retrofit. The training model they have developed is now being mirrored across the country, and Solus, our state agency for further education and training, is currently establishing 4 additional centres using the structures and learning materials this centre has developed. Waterford and Wexford Education and Training Board have now partnered with Wexford County Council to form the High Performance Building Alliance, which now seeks to be the first UNECE European Centre of Excellence for High Performance Buildings. This is a very exciting initiative, which I hope will achieve a global impact in the coming years, and which I fully support, as does the government. The UN Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change require a transformational shift of our economies and societies towards climate resilient and sustainable development. Ireland is supporting and driving many climate-related actions across a local and a national level, and we will continue with this work while also working with our international partners to drive the climate change agenda. Whilst we are only a small country, we can play a leadership role in this area, and we very much intend to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. Then we will continue with the ambassador from Austria, Mr. Christoph Wieland. You have the floor.
Dear Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to address you today at the 30th session of the UNECE Committee on Sustainable Energy. The topic of sustainable energy has a long tradition in Austria, be it nationally, within the European Union, or globally through the UN system and other organizations. We value UNECE's role as a place for dialogue, advancing cooperation on a myriad of issues. We see great value in having this conversation on sustainable energy and creating a better understanding of sustainable solutions for our region. Indeed, while there has been progress in our level of ambition, it is imperative to step up our action. Climate change, sustainable energy, and energy efficiency are key policy areas where we have set ourselves ambitious goals in Austria. The Austrian federal government aims at climate neutrality by 2040, as well as to become frontrunner for climate protection. A just and equitable transition from a fossil fuel-based global economy and energy system to one based on renewable energy and energy efficiency is imperative. Therefore, Austria aims to generate 100% of our electricity from renewable energy by 2030. The Renewables Deployment Act will be a key element to reaching the 100% electricity target. Focus of the Act is the introduction of market premiums to promote the generation of electricity from hydropower, photovoltaics, solid biomass and biogas, and likewise investment subsidies for the construction and expansion of photovoltaic plants, electricity storage facilities and wind power plants. The Austrian government also aims to make climate-friendly heating in energy-efficient buildings available to all people in Austria. The plan is to gradually phase out fossil fuels, no oil boilers in new buildings, a complete replacement of all oil heating systems by 2035, no further expansion of the gas network, and a step-by-step plan regarding the phase-out of fossil gas and the increase in building renovations towards 3%. Looking beyond Austria, our engagement in multilateral negotiations, platforms and organizations contributes to reaching the goals and targets of SDG 7 as well as of the Paris Agreement. Austria supports various organizations in their work to promote SDG 7. Together with UNEDO and the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, we co-organized the Vienna Energy Forum, whose work fed directly into the preparations of the UN High-Level Dialogue on Energy and COP26. We have also teamed up with UNEDO to engage in the promotion of renewable hydrogen application in industry. UNEDO's global partnership is an excellent initiative to prove that renewable energy in industrial applications pays off for all, increases competitiveness and reduces import dependence. We believe that energy transition with a clear focus on renewable energy is key to addressing climate change and helping us achieve sustainable development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. So I just got an indication that our further speakers might be available a little bit later, especially the representative from Ukraine, Yaroslav Demchenko, who is also member of our bureau, might be available past 12. So I try once again of the ambassador from, she's not available now, maybe then we try it later. So this gives me the opportunity first to thank all for these interventions. So there we heard about very ambitious goals as climate neutrality already by 2040. On the other side, the challenge of energy security, and especially in big countries, the challenge also to deal with the just transition issue. So that's a full spectrum. And I think we have to cover all these elements in our work. And this is quite challenging. So, but as we have now a little bit more time than expected, I would like to take the opportunity to invite other delegates, representatives from member states for interventions here, and maybe also to inform us about their approaches, and also once again reminding that we would be very much appreciate if there are also recommendations for our work for priorities, so that we can take up this in our future work plans. So I see one flag from Norway here in the plenary, but it's one hand. But for the virtual contributions, I will hand over to Scott, who is following up on that. Please, for Norway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Norwegian government has been very active in supporting the Paris Agreement and the UN 2030 agenda. And as you may know, that Norway is very much supplied with renewables, almost 100% already in the power sector. So we have to focus on other sectors. And the main points there is the transportation sector and also the offshore oil and gas facilities, which is a main contributor to emissions from the North Sea facilities. We have stated that at least 50% reduction should be targeted by 2030 compared to 1990, and the ambitions has increased. We're going to increase ambitions for the Glasgow meeting up to at least 55%, and we cooperate very closely with the European Union in these matters. We focus a lot on new technology. The transportation sector has been focusing in on electric solutions, battery technology, and the government has introduced several incentives to make that happen. And we see already today that in relative portions, the Norwegian transportation sector is among the leaders in the world in terms of electric cars. In the offshore sector, we electrify facilities through cables from onshore and also by increasing the offshore wind facilities, potential that may also be a basis for more exports of electricity. We have cables already in place with Germany and UK to exchange power. And we see that as an important part of the whole European market. Regarding new technologies, the government has fully financed now the first full-scale carbon capture facility in the North Sea. It's called the Longship, and it was presented to committee here in the last meeting. And part of that is a Northern Lights project managed by Equinor, Shell, and Total Energies. They will actually offer carbon storage services to Europe by expanding the storage capacity of carbon in this North Sea field. Initially, it will be capturing carbon shipped offshore and injected from the Norcem Heidelberg cement factory. And it's a strong hope that this could actually be the first of many such projects taking place in the UN region. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank this committee and the Secretariat for putting all this together. As the Executive Secretary said, energy is a good thing. It's providing quality to life. So the challenge is to find more sustainable energy solutions, not to cut energy supply. Sometimes we have the feeling that energy is a bad thing, but it's not. It's a matter to find the good solutions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Norway. The CCS issue is a very important point. We have made already some proposals from this committee, as you might know, and I think it becomes more and more higher on the agenda. So it's a very valid point we will take up. So I do not exactly know the order of Italy first, Italy, and then followed by the US.
No?
No? Then
Sorry. In that case, we've got a hand up from Vitaly, but it was not you. Okay, so that's the wrong person. We should go to the US then.
sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo the congratulations from my colleague in Norway to the Secretariat and the committee for the work they've done so far, and we're looking forward to a very engaging discussion over the next few days. Clean energy and decarbonization technologies represent multi-trillion-dollar opportunities through 2030. The countries that seize this opportunity will reap the economic rewards of competitive global industries and good-paying jobs. The United States intends to be a global leader in the development and deployment of clean energy technologies. The administration has vowed to spend $300 billion on research and development over 10 years, including clean energy and strengthening supply chains, and a $46 billion commitment for federal procurement of low carbon technologies. Today, 40% of all US power generation comes from carbon-free sources, including nuclear energy, hydropower, wind, and solar energy. Carbon emissions from the US power sector are at their lowest level in more than 40 years and continue to fall. US electric power companies are expressing increasing confidence that they can eliminate 70 to 80% of their carbon emissions by 2030. And at present, 3/4 of customer accounts in the United States are served by a utility with a carbon or emission reduction goal. The majority of these utilities are doing this for financial reasons, of course. Public policy has been instrumental. Federal incentives, as well as state-level clean energy standards, have helped spur development and lead to the precipitous decline in the cost of renewable energy technologies, which in turn has spurred greater investment in them. There's a growing focus on such projects, as decarbonization will require many new technologies, requiring further support to achieve mass market adaptation. Notably, American clean energy companies are at the forefront of this global transformation. American companies are developing and bringing to scale solar, onshore and offshore wind, hydrogen, advanced nuclear, energy storage, carbon capture, geothermal, smart grid, and other technologies that are absolutely critical for us to meet our net zero ambitions as a nation and as a global community. Leadership on developing, deploying, and driving down the cost of these technologies will help foreign partners commit to more ambitious and achievable targets. By investing in clean energy technology, innovation, and deployment, investor funds can help the world meet global climate targets and speed net zero transitions. The United States and the European Union just a few days ago announced the Global Methane Pledge, as you're very well aware, an initiative to reduce global methane emissions to be launched at the UN Climate Change Conference, the COP26 in Glasgow. President Biden and European Commission President Ursula urged countries at the US-led Major Economies Forum on Energy and Climate to join the pledge and welcome those that have already signaled their support. We hope to discuss this pledge a little bit further in the sessions during this conference. We must accomplish two critical things in the decade ahead. First, we must supercharge the deployment of the technologies that already exist today. And second, we need to make major investments to develop, demonstrate, and scale up innovative clean energy technologies. The deployment of this new energy economy is a multi-trillion-dollar market, as I mentioned earlier, for both technology and financial returns. Much remains to be done. Net zero targets are important, but equally important are credible, transparent plans to achieve these goals, including interim targets, such as the ones being developed today and in the next few days. The transition demands not only that the green portion of portfolios and balance sheets grow, but also that high carbon investments are reduced and eventually phased out. All of these efforts, unlocking new financial and economic possibilities for the United States and our partners and allies, will strengthen our momentum on strong climate action and provide sustainable financial returns. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, US. Other further interventions? Not here, but maybe virtually. That is not the case. So then I would like to, thank you for the contributions. So we have a chance to continue after our ceremony. So as mentioned, the Ukraine will make a statement after 12, so might be others are interested as well. So that's a chance to consider. But in the meantime, I think we go to the next item, the award ceremony. Scott, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. No, it's not this slide, if you can go back. We're actually still on the high-level segment agenda item, and one of the presentations was on the commitment trifecta. And I would like to have a very brief presentation of that paper to give you a sense of what's involved in the commitment trifecta. The Executive Secretary sent to the heads of delegations and to capitals as a result the document over the summertime, which lays out the three areas of interest. The commitment trifecta, as it's called. I need to explain already the language, if you can put it into slideshow, yes, and then the first slide. I was actually challenged on the title of a trifecta because that looks like a horse race, and that's not what's intended. It's more a run of three big events. So the idea is that if we actually pursued these three events, we could make major progress. We have sessions this afternoon in each of these three areas. One of the speakers this afternoon makes the point that the statistics of energy are presented from a very interesting perspective. It's a very much of a supply side perspective. Buildings, I'm talking about superior performance in buildings. And if you look at all of the energy statistics, you see a big wodge is electricity and electricity supply and the challenge we have with getting to sustainable electricity. And in fact, if you look at the electricity market, you find that most of it is consumed in buildings. So the idea of putting buildings right on top of the commitment trifecta is a reflection of the importance that they bear, not only for energy efficiency, but for quality of life. The second one is on the concentrations of methane. I'll explain each of these in a moment. And then the modernization of resource management. If we can go to the next slide, please. And you just click through, yeah. So what we're looking at with buildings in terms of delivering quality of life there are outcomes that we should be able to expect. Whenever we do the analysis of retrofits or energy efficiency investments, we always say, wow, how much will we save and how much does it cost? We do a net present value calculation. And invariably, people say, well, no, I'd prefer to go to the theater on Saturday night. Something's just happened to the screen, but we hope it'll come back. Oops. So I'll continue while it gets sorted out. So what we have is an issue where how are we going to get the retrofit market for buildings to be done properly? That's really where the question and the challenge lies. There are a wide range of outcomes that we should expect. When we see health being improved because of humidity, because of mold in buildings, that's an issue. When you have affordability and poor households who can't pay their bills, that's an issue. When you have social justice and other issues that are out there, we've got a group looking at all of these outcomes that you should be able to expect. And if we can deliver on high performance buildings, suddenly the maths change. Suddenly it becomes economic to make those investments in the retrofit market and get buildings up to the standards that they should be at. You heard the minister from Ireland speaking about the objectives of the Irish government. If we could do that at global scale and put the performance of buildings right up to the very top, that would be outstanding. Now I'm looking at the slide that's not on the screen. The first thing we've got to get right is the building envelope. That means getting the building designed properly, getting it built perfectly, and using building materials that have low or no carbon embedded in them. So when the ambassador from Germany presented the IKI project that he described, this is about getting the supply chain that delivers buildings done properly. And that's quite important. I think the folks on the Zoom call can see it. It's just in the room that we've got a challenge. The second thing then is getting the systems. We've got heating, ventilating, air conditioning. We've got all of the plug-in loads, and we got to get those hyper efficient. That means minimum performance standards for all of that equipment. Once you've got the systems in place, it then involves ICT, information and communications technology. We've got to track what's happening in the indoor environment in terms of humidity, in terms of lighting, in terms of the rest of it, temperature, mold. We've got to be able to track what's going into the building. If we're going to pursue the circular economy, what went into the building so at the end of the life, we can recover it. That's true with critical raw materials. It's true with building materials. It's true across the range. The buildings have got to communicate with the outside environment. Should I be cooling or not cooling for the next 10 minutes or for the next hour? The price elasticity of electricity demand suddenly exists. It's never existed before. So you suddenly get a responsive system that can enable the uptake of renewable energy because the intermittency can be accommodated. So the ICT digitalization angle is extremely important. You then go over to another circle on my famous Venn diagram that you can't see. And that's about mobility and transport. If you get the entire built environment designed properly, you can deliver massive results. Actually, if you can go ahead and advance the slides, that would be great because we got the systems, the energy, the mobility. Water. Water is becoming an increasingly huge challenge. And getting water management so that we can deal with floods, we can deal with droughts, we can deal with fire, etc., is all connected to the built environment. And then the final one is food and wastes and the rest of it. So if we get the built environment done right, and it's been driven very much by this committee and the work of the subsidiary bodies, our next step has got to be reaching out to the other committees and the other activities to make sure we have a coordinated action. And we're in the process of putting together a global movement on high performance buildings. If you can move to the next slide, please. You trust me, it was great. Well, you couldn't see it. These are the outcomes that we have as a list of outcomes. We've got energy, you can now see it. There's energy and climate action that I've mentioned. There's the resilience, which is affordability in the weather, health. All of these deserve quantification. What can we achieve? How do you measure it? Once you've got ideas of how you can measure it, What kind of commitments should we be asking countries to come through? The weather in Moscow is not the same as the weather in Rio de Janeiro, so the way you do it isn't the same, but the principles apply equally pretty much everywhere because it does translate into quality of life. If you can move to the next slide, please. I'll now switch over to methane. There's a lot of debate in the world about the equivalence between methane and CO2. Invariably, we have an argument. Methane stays in the atmosphere for 12 years. CO2 stays in the atmosphere for a very long time. So they knew a sort of net present value calculation, and you can either say it's 28 times more climate forcing than CO2, or it's 84 times more climate forcing than CO2. My personal, this is not a organizational position, but as long as atmospheric concentrations of methane continue to rise, and they are at the highest level that they've been for 650,000 years, as long as that's the case, what's the argument for using anything less than the instantaneous value, which is 120? That matters because the economics become huge. And already if you use 84, 50% of methane emissions make economic sense to control today. So the idea of coming forward with a full-fledged program of monitoring and reporting and verifying and pursuing mitigation, you can suddenly understand why the US and the EU are pushing for major declarations of commitment and action on the methane over the next decade. So our call in the methane management section is, let's get countries to agree to pursue an international decade declaration at the General Assembly. That doesn't mean we're wanting one place to do all things. That would never happen. But there needs to be a coordinated effort amongst all of the initiatives and all of the countries to get the outcomes that are sitting right in front of us. And that's why the commitment trifecta has buildings number 1, but methane management is right behind it. If you can go to the next slide, please. Basically, I've said these things. If you get management of methane, there are very strong near-term climate benefits. There's this huge benefit, that potential that's not only there, but it's also economic to do. The technology exists. It improves air quality and safety. It contributes across a spectrum of areas. It goes into just transition and sustainable hydrogen, because if you're going to use the existing natural gas system for hydrogen or for other purposes, you can achieve a lot. Next slide, please. The final area, and there's an entire panel on this, we had a regional workshops in January with the Secretary General's initiative on the extractive industries, thinking through how can we put in place a global framework for sustainable resource management. We've developed over years the United Nations framework classification. Our expert group is now moving towards development of a United Nations resource management system. One is more of a static reporting on resources that are under management. The other is a more dynamic. How do we develop these resources in a way that's aligned with the Paris Agreement and that's aligned with the 2030 agenda? And if we can get those both in place, that's fantastic. The other activity we've been involved in was with the G7. They're keenly interested in critical raw materials. Critical raw materials are essential for the transition. Critical raw materials are essential for the destination. It involves batteries, it involves equipment, etc. And there's concern at a global scale about having access to critical raw materials. And if you look at the human footprint today, if everybody on the planet consumed the way that most people, the wealthiest countries are consuming, we would need 7 planet Earths. That's why circular economy is such a critical topic. So we've got to rethink how we develop the resources that we require for our daily lives. We've put this sustainable resource management system in place. If you can go to the next slide, please. And what we've proposed is a global framework. And it's being taken up in different places. It's being discussed. It has 5 parts to it. The first part is developing a social economic, environmental contract license to operate, if you will. So this license to operate needs to be more comprehensive and cover all of the areas that are of concern. It's all about environmental stewardship. It's all about climate change. It's about the transitions we're talking about. The second area is destined towards the financing institutions. If they're going to be going out and investing in resource development, they need a taxonomy and they need principles that then shape how they undertake their financing decisions. The third one then is having that framework with pretty much the UNRMS and UNFC as its basis, principles-based integrated and sustainable resource management. The third area comes to another division in ECE, and we want to work closely with them. It's on traceability and transparency in our resource supply chains, and that's a huge area of opportunity. The final area is with our environment division on strategic environmental assessments to mitigate negative impacts. Pardon? Okay, thank you. So if you look at sustainable resource management, suddenly you find that this, if we can get this right, and we can start driving all of the trillions of dollars of investment that we've just heard reported in ways that are aligned with the 2030 agenda and in ways that are aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement, this becomes actually a directional shift for the world. So this commitment trifecta, it's just three things, but if we can get those three things right, they will make a difference. And that's the call for action. I think I'm getting over enthusiastic. I think I'll stop there. I don't know if there are any comments or reactions to the points that I've made, but this is the call to action for member states to consider as they go to COP and as they participate in the high-level dialogue later this week. Thank you very much, and I will stop there.
Thank you, Scott. So I think your enthusiasm is allowed. We appreciate it this very much. And all these activities mentioned are already part of our work program, and they are supported by member states. And they are very timely, as we have heard, with this US-EU initiative on methane. And therefore, I think we have a very strong mandate to continue to set a priority on these three areas of work. So if there are any questions, then it's a chance now. Otherwise, shall we continue, Scott, to the awards? Okay, I think we take this opportunity, and there's a chance after 12 to continue with this agenda item. Scott, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. We've had a very interesting exercise over the course of the summer and the early autumn of looking back at the 30th anniversary of the Committee on Sustainable Energy. And when you realize how much has actually been accomplished by the committee and its subsidiary bodies, and when you consider the contributions that have been made by key individuals, it becomes challenging. Where do you start? Where do you stop? Because the list is actually very, very long. We started off with multiple pages. So as the Executive Secretary said, we will have an extended and more elaborate ceremony online before the end of the year to have a much broader recognition of all of the contributions, friends of UNECE Energy, if I can call it that. But for now, we've focused on 11 specific areas. And to read it out, to recognize the key contributions and notable efforts of selected individuals to the work of the sub-program, we've gone through and developed some awards. We had a jury that we put together involving the Secretariat and involving vice chairs of the committee, who looked through the nominations that we received from all various places. And you can see the criteria that we used. The emphasis was on outstanding impact and tangible results. We didn't want something that was just light and easy, something where there's been a sustained effort delivering a real result that has a tangible outcome. We would also be looking at something with notable progress or innovative change, including standard setting, development of guidelines. We'd be looking for significant recognition by the external stakeholders or partners. There was also an effort to have some regional and gender balance. Not everybody is here in the room who's the recipient, but they've all been warned. So what we're going to do is read out the awards to those who are named today. Please do come up and you'll be receiving your award, and we'd like to get a photo op. What's an award ceremony without a photo opportunity? And for those who are not physically in the room, we will actually be sending these to you. We'll probably send a PDF version first, but then you'll get it, the check will be in the mail afterwards. So with that, I would like to start. We've got a long list here, but we'll just go through them. And the first, if I may, is on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the UNECE Committee on Sustainable Energy. The Sustainable Energy Subprogram of UNECE expresses deep gratitude to Raymond Pilcher for having driven key best practice guidance on coal mine methane and abandoned mine methane, and for his sustained support to all UNECE Sustainable Energy Subprogram activities. So a round of applause. If I can have you all go over there. Yeah, take it and go. If we can have a, yes, there we go. The guidelines, but Ray is kind of never stopping. He's always online with us at 4 in the morning from Colorado. So it's a wear and tear. I'm going in the order I have them here. You want Sigurd next? They're not in the order. Okay. Apparently there was an order that I haven't respected here, but let me go to our next recipient. Okay, our next recipient is Sigurd Heiberg for his long-standing work on the United Nations Framework Classification for Resources, his leadership as chair of the committee and the expert group on resource management, and his advisor role to the UNECE pathways and carbon neutrality projects. Sigurd, congratulations. I'm looking for the best next one. Our next award is going to be on a group basis for catalyzing the High Performance Buildings Initiative, drafting the framework guidelines for energy efficiency standards in buildings, and setting up international centers of excellence on high performance buildings. The recipients are Tomas O'Leary. Tomas is an irrepressible Irishman who really was the catalyst for making the whole high performance buildings initiative happen. Jim Freihout, professor from Penn State University. Helge Schramm from Danfoss. Bob Cavey. Richard Jansing from New York Building Energy Exchange. And who's with us is Jenna Kramer from GBA. So Jenna, if you could come up to receive the award. Next. You want him next? I told her it was him next. No, there's just one. They're all. Which one? Jenna has multiplied herself. Thank you very much. Our next recipient, and really this whole exercise of looking back would not have been possible without his institutional memory, without his passion and enthusiasm. And in fact, we wouldn't be here today doing what we're doing without his leadership. So we'd like to express deep gratitude to Dr. Klaus Brandau for his contribution to East-West relations during the Cold War as director of the UNECE Energy Division, and for sustained support of the work of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe on energy issues. She's making you do it in order now.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Scott, this ceremony reminds me of the Oscar ceremonies. If you look at the action, the winners rush once they are nominated to the rostrum and say invariably two things. One, they thank the jury, which of course I do. And secondly, they read lists of people. They are grateful for their contribution. I will nominate only one person. During those difficult times, it was the then Executive Secretary of ECE, Mr. Janez Stanovnik, who steered the boat, meaning your committee, during very rough times. And for us, his colleagues, he was the person who protected us from nuisances that quite naturally during those Cold War periods affected everyone. So it's dedicated to Janez Stanovnik. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We've switched now to some online participants. The Sustainable Energy Sub-Program expresses deep gratitude to Professor Friedrich Wilhelm Wellmer and Andrei Subelj. Excuse me, my apologies for the pronunciation. Andrei in memoriam, he's passed away, but his family is delighted that, at the recognition for the work he did, for their work on the United Nations Framework Classification for Resources, including for an innovative classification proposal, and their contribution to resource taxonomy, and for inventing the framework's numerical codification. These two gentlemen are actually why we have the UNFC that we have today. They were foundational in their work, and this is an award to recognize their contributions. So a round of applause. Another gentleman who is a long-standing stalwart for our committee and our activities is not able to be with us today, but it's Mr. Sergei Katishev. And he's awarded this for his work as vice chair of the group of experts on cleaner electricity systems and his sustained contributions to the carbon neutrality and pathways projects. Frankly, the work that we've been able to do on high efficiency, low emissions technology and on carbon capture and storage and the rest would not have been possible without the contributions of Mr. Katishev. So congratulations to him. The next is to Mr. Shamil Dekambayev, who is awarded for a specific set of projects which are extremely innovative that were done over the course of the last years for his strategic partnership on the application of a biogas technology model for rural areas in Kyrgyzstan and for leading the United Nations Special Program for the Economies of Central Asia, the SPECA program, working group on water, energy, and environment. So regrettably, he cannot be with us today, but the award is well deserved. The next one then is to another group activities. And these people are here, so I'm gonna have to make you all stand up again. So sorry. For leading the group of experts on energy efficiency to be an internationally recognized authority in the sector. The recognition is expressed to Tim Farrell, Alexander Dukovsky, Stefan Butner, and Hannes McNulty. So congratulations. And we have two of them with us today. No, please, sorry. It's probably not politically correct to make your boss too much exercise during their morning session. So our next is an acknowledgement of the work that's gone into the coal mine methane area. And this award is for the development and support of the International Centers of Excellence on coal mine methane and the dissemination of best practices on coal mine methane in China, Poland, and beyond. So in recognition for this, we have Jin Jizin, David Creedy, Bo Jia, Jacek Skiba, Lukasz Kropluski, Piotr Kazra, and Janusz Jureska. And I do apologize for my pronunciations, but I hope that's okay. So a round of applause. And I think I'm going to move to another one that's actually extremely important for me. Actually, they're all important to me personally, but this one was very touching. There are two individuals who get an award for the work that they've done. One of whom, Barry Worthington, regrettably passed away last year. So it's awarded to him as well in memoriam. So Barry Worthington and Jared Daniels are awarded this for their leadership and sustained support of the committee and group of experts on cleaner electricity production from fossil fuels, particularly on carbon capture and storage. They drove the recommendations that UNECE made to the UNFCCC on carbon capture, use, and storage. So particularly on carbon capture and storage, energy-intensive industries, pathways, and carbon neutrality. So a round of applause, please. And then the final one is again online. And he is online, so I will actually call on him to make a few remarks after I've read this out. An award to David MacDonald for his contributions to the committee and the expert group on resource management, leading the development and implementation of the United Nations Framework Classification for Resources, and overseeing its application to renewable energy, injection projects, and anthropogenic resources. So a round of applause today first. And I can see he's online with a rainbow over his shoulder. So David, the word is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. This is a real honor to me to be able to accept this award. I feel very passionate about the work that we do in the expert group on resource management, and I've been very, very happy to have had the opportunity to work with so many good people over the years. When I started about 12, 13, 14 years ago working in the expert group, we had a big vision. We were going to be an international classification around minerals and petroleum, and we were going to provide the world with a level playing field and a good comparable set of standards around projects for minerals and for petroleum. But we've expanded so much in that time to now that we're now covering anthropogenic resources, renewable resources, water, injection projects. The scope of what we're doing has expanded so much, and I believe that the value that we're going to hold for the member nations and the world in total going forward, I think is immense. I think necessary to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and so looking forward very much to see what happens moving forward. I would say, however, though, that the work that we do within the expert group would not be possible without the great work and support of everyone within the Secretariat, from Scott and his support there, through to all the others within the teams directly supporting the work of the expert group. So I'll just mention quickly Harry Tilsidis and Slavko Solar, who've just come in to do that, and the many people we've had in the past, from Clark Talkington and others who gave us support in the work we've done there. I've left one person out though, and that's Charlotte Griffiths. And I do have to say that none of the work that we do within the expert group on resource management would be possible without her absolute dedication and commitment to the work that we do and to achieving the goals that we have there. And I would like to ask Scott to put up one extra award, and this is an award for Charlotte for the work that she's done, because it's a bit special, the work that she does for us. I've never worked with anyone who has been more committed to achieving a role than Charlotte is. When I took over the chairmanship of this role from Michael Lynch Bell many years ago, he said to me, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You'll have a couple emails a week maybe, and you'll have to have a few meetings now and then. It's not that much." Well, I found that working with Charlotte means constant stream of emails coming in, because she never gives up working. She works 24 hours a day, it seems. Her dedication is paramount to this role, and she doesn't work so much for any reason other that she truly believes in the work that the committee is doing. That she knows that moving forward on what we're doing is absolute paramount to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and she believes passionately. And it's that And it's that level of commitment, dedication, and real caring about the people that she works with that makes her such a pleasure to work with. So Charlotte, it's with really great level of gratitude that we offer this this small recognition of the contribution that you've made to everything within the Committee of Sustainable Development, particularly though to the implementation of the United Nations framework and your work with the expert group on resource management. So thank you very much.
So I will read it out and then we'll do the same as we've done before. So I have to make my boss stand up again. But we express deep gratitude to Charlotte Griffiths for her outstanding contributions to the implementation of the United Nations Framework Classification for Resources and for reviving the expert group on resource management. All right. So that brings our little interlude to a close. Thank you all very much for your kind attention, and I'll turn it back to the chair to continue the proceedings.
Yeah, thank you very much for this nice session, and thank you to the committee who did the nomination process. So I think this was well received among all of us, and my congratulations once again from this side. So our work really depends on the commitment of the experts, of the members of the Secretariat, and all those voluntary contributing to our work here under the UNECE. And these awards are a nice recognition. It's only a small part, but I think it gives at least to some extent the thinking that we really support and recognize this work behind all these activities. So then I would like to come back to our agenda item 3. It depends if there are some more volunteers for interventions. So the question is to Kiev, if Yaroslav Demchenko is available for an Ukrainian or a statement by Ukraine now. So Scott, can you see it on the screen?
I am checking to see if he has come online yet. He's here. If we could invite Mr. Demchenkov to unmute yourself and take your video off and make your statement, please. He is online.
Hello. Hello, everybody. I hope you hear me.
We hear you faintly.
Hello, everybody. It's always a pleasure to speak to the distinguished audience of the UNECE event participants. And it's truly a platform to discuss and plan the next steps on the challenges our economies and the energy sector face. Yesterday, I took part in the meeting of the high-level working group on Central and Southern Eastern Europe energy connectivity, CSEC, and the energy ministers of the EU and CSEC countries discussed the sustainability of the energy sector, the European Green Deal, and the perspectives of renewables. UNECE is the instrument in achievement of sustainable development goals. One of them is affordable and clean energy. This is also a major focus of the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine in its work. Green transition is a big challenge for countries that still have a significant share of thermal generation. Ukraine is one of such countries. We have about 30% of electricity coming from mostly coal-fired thermal power plants. We are aware of the responsibility we have of the climate and the planet's future. Therefore, I'm happy to inform you that Ukraine has adopted the ambitious second nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. We plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 65% compared to the 1990 level by 2030. We are now preparing a decarbonization plan that will provide for a gradual phase out of coal-fired thermal generation within the next 10 years. And we see the prospects of replacing it with renewables and nuclear generation. Speaking about renewables, at CSEC, we marked the importance of development of offshore wind generation in Ukraine in the Black Sea. Ukraine plans to have 8 gigawatts of wind power in Ukraine in 2030, compared to 1.1 gigawatt today. By 2050, we hope to increase the capacity to 32 gigawatts. As for solar, we plan to have 12 gigawatts by 2030 compared to 5.3 gigawatts today. And by 2050, we plan to reach 58 gigawatts of solar power capacity. Of course, such capacities require other technologies such as smart grids and storage. We are now also focusing on hydrogen as an important component of large-scale decarbonization. This is especially important for the transportation and steel industries. Besides, hydrogen has the potential as an energy storage element. We appreciate that UNECE pays attention to hydrogen energy. This is important because of the strategic place Ukraine can take in the future hydrogen economy. We have a big share of renewables and low carbon nuclear energy and a vast gas transit network. It is an opportunity for us to become a flagship economy in hydrogen and in energy applications. It is evident that the current price spike on natural gas and coal gives more way for green hydrogen to replace these traditional fossil fuels. It is also a reminder that energy security and energy poverty threats apply to all countries. A certain country, everybody knows which country I'm talking about, uses its gas supply monopoly for profits and geopolitical influence. We can stand together against this pressure by focusing on a green transition. This is how we all reach energy security and provide affordable energy to our households and businesses. European solidarity and regional cooperation are also two important components for reaching climate neutrality goals. On behalf of Ukrainian Energy Ministry, I would like to thank UNECE for its work and wish everybody meaningful and fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Then I would like to continue if there are further requests. Is this virtually the case or? Okay, so then I think we can come to an end with this agenda item 3. Once again, thank you for the contribution, for the insights, and also for the recommendations for our work. I think we have good opportunities in the course of the next 2 days to take up one or the other proposal. There were many points already highlighted which are on our agenda, so we will have more time to discuss it in more detail. Then I would like to continue to agenda item 4. Okay, then yeah, you are right. So we have the opportunity even now. Then we go to the conclusions regarding this agenda item 3. Will you read? Scott, will you read? Okay.
Thank you very much. As we've agreed, we're going to go through the conclusions and recommendations at the end of each agenda item. And as we are at the end of agenda item 3, we have the following 2 conclusions that are offered. Number 19, recognizing that each country has its own endowment of natural resources and its unique cultural, legislative, and regulatory heritage. Recognizing that addressing climate change is a critically urgent imperative, and recognizing that achieving the quality of life objectives of the 2030 Agenda remains an important opportunity for collaboration among member states. The committee called on member states to deliver tangible outcomes at scale in the near term and over the long term through their commitments, plans, and actions, and to A, redefine energy and resources as services to facilitate the transition to sustainable energy systems. B, deploy more effective and pragmatic approaches to reducing the net carbon intensity of the energy system. C, ensure that the actions taken are cost-effective, resource-efficient, and socially responsive in their respective contexts. And D, consider the life cycle and transversal consequences of the alternatives, including embedded carbon, greenhouse gases, water, and resource implications. And then number 20, paragraph 20. Further, the committee took note of the document, A Commitment Trifecta, and the informal companion document, A Push to Pivot, and called on member states to consider taking action in the 6 areas indicated in the documents. So those are the conclusions that are recommended from the item 3. I think I saw a hand going up, Mr. Chair, from Russian Federation.
Russia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to speak in English to ease up a bit the exchange on this one. So do I get it right that we have to sort of pre-adopt the outcome document at this stage, or we are just presented with the draft, which we're going to come back after? I mean, with an understanding that we submit some sort of like written comments on this, because it depends whether we should engage in the text right now or just leave it for a moment later.
Thank you for the question. So the idea was, as in the previous years, just to avoid that by the end of the committee meeting on Friday afternoon, we have a too full agenda to do it item by item. So at the end, there will be an opportunity to come back to the respective agenda items. So, but most of the work should be, at least it is the preference, to be done already directly after the respective agenda item to save time. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Then in this case, I'll just flag at this stage that we're going to have some slight amendment in item 19B to make it in line with the Paris Agreement text. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Guys, I think we take this in mind so that we come back to this point later when the proposals are available. But now continue with the next points. Any object?
So we have.
Yeah, but my understanding was that Russia at this stage is not in a position to make a concrete proposal how to change 19B.
Well, as a matter of fact, I do, but I'm just asking whether we're gonna jump into like negotiating the text at this stage or just suggesting proposals. I can just read it right away. No problem. It's not huge.
Okay, then
should I
do it now?
Okay, then in the first line, it would read, our proposal would read as deploy more effective and pragmatic approaches to managing energy system with a goal to achieve carbon neutrality. That would be the end of the line. And then we just proceed to the item C. Thank you.
Any concerns?
And then it would delete reducing the net carbon, the semicolon after neutrality.
Any comments or objections virtually? Okay, then I think we can take it. Thank you. Scott, will you continue? Okay, so we heard that you, Commission, would like to comment. Please go ahead.
Thank you, dear colleagues, and I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to participate in this discussion. I was wondering if we could also increase sustainability at the same time. So it would lead to deploy more effective and pragmatic approaches to manage energy system with the goal to increase sustainability and achieve carbon neutrality. Thank you for the consideration.
Yes, that's fine. It's agreed. Any further comments?
No, that should be deleted. And it will take there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can continue. So thank you very much. And we go to agenda item 4. This is a strategic review of the sustainable energy subprogram. We already referred to this morning, but I would like to invite Scott to give us a short introduction for this item.
Thank you very much. And we do have a very brief presentation. I'm not going to go through the full document because you've had it. It's simply to explain where we stand with the document. While we're waiting for the PowerPoint to come up, at the last committee meeting, our chairs of the subsidiary bodies had drafted a strategic review, and the committee took note of it and requested that there be an extended consultation. If you can go to the next slide, please, that there be a consultation among member states. So that's what we've done, is gone through an extensive consultation process where member states nominated members to participate in that consultation. There were meetings that took place on the 26th of February, on the 16th of April, on the 28th of June. And we went through a process of discussing and dialogue and then getting more and more into the nitty-gritty of details on the text. So we finally went through with written procedures and back and forth with a text that was finally distributed to the group with a deadline of September 3rd for any additional comments, and none were received. The document has been presented to this session of the committee for endorsement. It would inform going forward decisions regarding work plans and priorities. And we heard the chair make reference to those this morning. If you can go to the next slide, please. The idea is that we're trying to help the member states meet their commitments. The mandate we have is to secure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all, and to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon footprint of the energy sector in the region. So you can hear loud and clear Paris Agreement and 2030 Agenda in that mandate. It's both, it's not one versus the other. The idea is that we're trying to enhance integration of the regional markets and facilitate transitions to sustainable energy systems. And the word transitions is recognizing that there's not one transition. Every country's got a path, so we want to have transitions in plural. The collective, during the consultation process, but also from the chairs, really said that the work we're doing on the strategic review, the work we're doing under the committee, has got to reflect the UN scale and scope, its role, its values. And we have to think through in terms of the impact, the political relevance, visibility. There's a whole list here. These are all important for the activities that we're doing. And this really highlights the opportunity that we have to lift up to a scale. It's not enough that we have one center of excellence for our framework guidelines in a location that might have a very postage stamp impact. We've got to take that work and do it at global scale, deep and wide. The same holds true for all of the other activities that we have ongoing. So it's the resource efficiency, it's all of these benefits that we would expect. The intent is that we're producing products and activities that deliver tangible results. I used to have the word concrete results, but nobody likes the word concrete, so I changed it to tangible results in the near term, but with enduring impact. We don't want to be a ribbon cutting exercise that has no consequence. There has to be a measurable result of the work that we're doing. In all of the work we're doing, and every time we have a discussion, so you see it throughout, it's important to recognize, and we heard it already this morning, that member states take different views on fossil fuels, on carbon capture, use and storage, on nuclear power. I could make that list longer probably, but those are the big ticket items. So we have to be cognizant that as an organization, UNECE does not take a view. We must be agnostic because our membership reflects different views on the energy system. Next slide, please. So here are the current strategic priorities. Mr. Keinhorst already listed those. I won't do it again. If you can go to the next slide, please. The list of 16 that we have is all about measuring and monitoring the energy-related SDGs. It's about improving energy efficiency across all sectors, deploying sustainable hydrogen solutions, ensuring just and inclusive transitions, studying how to address efficient use of energy resources, and in this regard, the impact of subsidies as well as carbon pricing options. As mentioned earlier, that's an instruction, if you will, from our parent body, the Commission. Assessing energy market and power market design, removing barriers to energy trade, enabling optimal deployment of digitalization, ensuring energy system resilience, and assuring energy security. Health wording. This is a PowerPoint slide, so I've compressed the language. In the real document, you'll find the full phrases for all of those activities properly said. Next slide, please. So the next step is the committee is asked to endorse that strategic review. We've followed the request of the committee at the last meeting. We've gone through that consultation process, and we've arrived at what I consider to be a consensus, recognizing that there might be further observations today. For the Secretariat to include the range of activities that are listed for plans for future work, and to call on member states and other partners to support these activities with extra budgetary resources. It's a significant set of tasks that we've set forth for ourselves. If we want to achieve those tasks properly, they need to be resourced accordingly. With that, Mr. Chair, I will stop. The conclusions are on the paper, so we can leave them there, but maybe we can first solicit reactions or comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. So this was indeed an exercise over the last month with a good participation and many contributions now reflected in the report. I think, therefore, mainly the discussion has already taken place, but anyway, this is an opportunity to highlight one or the other element. So you are kindly invited to comment or for interventions. So one important task which continues is to decide on the priorities. So with the resources, as Scott just has mentioned, available at the moment, it will be difficult to address all these 16 points. Therefore, we are continuously grateful for advice and for clear indications by the member states what is on the top of their priority list. So are there any remarks, contributions virtually? Scott, please.
While I'm looking for hands to go up or flags to come up, I would actually like to, on the resource side, express our deep gratitude to the Russian Federation for the continuing support over the years for a range of projects without which we wouldn't be able to succeed. I would also like to express our deep gratitude to Germany for their newly launched ICI project, as we heard. That's a significant endeavor. And I encourage other countries to match the support from those two key players for us.
Thank you, Scott. There's one flag from the European Commission and from the Russian Federation. Lucy, will you start?
Уважаемые господа, господин Скотт, большое спасибо за развернутый доклад и представление стратегического обзора. Я хотел бы от имени Российской Федерации выразить благодарность секретариату, Бюро Комитета по устойчивой энергетике, а также группам экспертов за работу по подготовке итогового стратегического обзора под программой ЕЭК ООН по устойчивой энергетике. Мы понимаем, и как вы справедливо уже отметили, были горячими участниками дискуссии, и понимаем, насколько сложно было сбалансировать интересы всех сторон. Мы документ поддерживаем и считаем, что его принятие будет способствовать обеспечению устойчивого развития государств региона, успешной работе комитета в русле глобальной энергетической и климатической повестки на период до 2030 года и выполнению обязательств государствами по реализации Парижского соглашения. Спасибо.
Thank you, Russia. Then European Commission.
Thank you, dear colleagues. I hope you can also hear me well. I just want to very briefly, first of all, thank all our colleagues, counterparts, and also the Secretariat in enabling the informal consultations and for all the discussions that we have had concerning the strategic review of the Sustainable Energy sub-program. Also in view of needing to prioritize, and as we do have a number of areas that we put forward that are relatively new, we would like to make sure that there is always an evaluation by the experts on the need and added value to explore these new areas. That would be, for example, the case for hydropower classification and for the new work on gas. But of course, we're very happy with the compromise that we have reached with all the relevant partners and are looking forward to working together in future.
Thank you, EU. Further comments? Virtually? That's not the case. Austria.
Thank you. Dear Chair, dear Secretariat, can you hear me? Austria would like to thank the Secretariat and the committee for its work and for organizing today's meeting, as well as for the informal consultation that we've had. Austria supports the document, but Austria also believes that the decarbonization of our energy system needs to be based on renewable energy sources and that we have to use our energy more efficiently. Therefore, Austria welcomes the increased focus on renewable energy and energy efficiency in the revised strategic review of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe Sustainable Energy Sub-Program. Austria does, however, not consider nuclear power to be compatible with the concept of sustainable development. In Austrian view, reliance on nuclear power is neither a viable nor a cost-efficient option to combat climate change. While we recognize that different countries face different challenges in decarbonizing their energy systems, the long-term goal, the policy, and the technologies in achieving an environmentally sound and socially acceptable low greenhouse gas future are all there for all of us. With that in mind, we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Austria, for the statement. Further comments, statements? So far, there are no proposals to change the language, so I think we can read it and decide. No?
That then brings us to the conclusion on the strategic review. We're actually not reviewing the entire report right now. At the end of each agenda item, we're only looking at the conclusion paragraph. We will have an opportunity to review the entire draft report on Friday. So paragraph number 22 said that the committee noted with appreciation the achievements over the past 30 years, notably early in the areas of energy security, dialogue, subsidies and pricing, coal and gas, more recently in supporting energy system transitions, reducing the environmental footprint of energy, and sustainable resource management. The conclusion might be valid. I think it goes to the previous agenda item. Number 23 then is the one related to the strategic review. The committee endorsed the revised strategic review of the ECE Sustainable Energy Sub-Program with the reference, requested the groups of experts to reflect the strategic review in their future work plans and programs of work, and called on member states to provide needed resources to accomplish those activities that cannot be delivered within existing regular budget resources. To see if everybody accepts that language. I see no hands online. EU.
EU, Lucy, would you like to comment?
Yes, please. Thank you for giving me the floor again, Mr. Chairman. In line with the comments that I stated previously, we would like to add an additional sentence, which I am sharing, trying to share in the chat. Yes. And it would read as follows. The committee requested that for new work areas, such as the development of the UNFC hydropower specifications or the normative instruments for sustainable production, distribution and consumption of gas, I think there is a bit longer description of this work item, and analysis of the needs and added value of such work within UNECE is explored before launching such new initiatives. Thank you for the consideration.
If you could share that on the chat, that would be excellent. It's been put at the end of paragraph 22. It should be at the end of paragraph 23.
Any comments?
Russian Federation.
Russia, please.
Thank you. I would prefer to reserve on this one. And first of all, we need to see the text. And also the current formulation of the paragraphs looks more appropriate. So, but anyway, we're going to reserve and defer discussion on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? This is not the case, then I think we can continue with agenda item 5, and maybe if time allows, we can come back to this paragraph 22 after having discussed item 5. Item 5 is pathways to sustainable energy, and I would also like Scott to make a short introduction.
Thank you. If I may, the EU has put the language that they propose in the chat, Stephanie, and it would go at the end of paragraph 23, not 22. If you could put on the presentation for the Pathways program, please. The Pathways program has proceeded for a number of years. We did complete the phase 1 of Pathways, and that had some very important results. And we've been working on finding ways to move forward. The executive committee requested that we prepare an information note, a concept note, to explain the overall picture of the Pathways program, so that as project proposals were brought before them, they knew how it fit in the bigger scheme of things. So this document, this paper on the Pathways program, is in fact prepared for the ExCom for their information, and is provided to this committee for your information. It just is a contextual piece. It was also part of the consultation process. So exactly the same process that we went through for the strategic review consultation, we also did the consultation on the Pathways program. Lo and behold, they were run on the same dates because we wanted to be time efficient. If you can go to the first slide, please. So, as I said, the ExCom requested the preparation. The consultations followed on February, April, and June. It was prepared, agreed, and has been distributed to the committee for information. If you can go to the next slide, please. What we have, and it's shown in red, is the first phase where we developed a modeling architecture. We prepared some results based on initial inputs, and we developed a concept for an early warning system. And that was the conclusion of Pathways Phase 1. It was quite an extensive process, and I find gave some very rich results. We've been now thinking about Pathways 2. That has two parts to it. One part is actually being conducted under the group of experts on clean electricity systems. It's called Carbon Neutrality Project. And it's doing much more analysis, technology deep dives on how do you go about achieving carbon neutrality. It has looked in depth at fossil, it has looked in depth at nuclear, and it is exploring hydrogen as well. You can see the status of the funding. That's ongoing work. It's been largely completed. Now they're going to be looking at cross-technology optimization. So that's the next phase in the work that they're going to be doing. There is further work that could be done that we believe. There hasn't been done yet, but much more deep dives on renewables, deep dives on energy efficiency, looking at other economic sectors because it's been focused on power and energy intensive industries, and then other business models, DG or whatever. So there's a lot of work that's possible to be done that needs to be discussed and potentially funded. Under the Pathways Phase 2 proper, under the committee, there's the idea of conducting a high-level political dialogue. And this is where there's an explicit proposal for a deep dive on Central Asia. And once we've gone through the deep dive on Central Asia, to then conduct regional deep dives on the other regions, and they're all listed on the slide. There would also be capacity building on the use of the models. Now, there's some additional work that could be done, that needs to be done on innovation, on the development of the early warning system, to elaborate on what's already been done. And then as the models have evolved, to do that capacity building on the use of the model. So you see it twice in there, both on a sub-regional basis and on a more generic basis. So that is the Pathways program that's proposed. We want to move forward, and we are calling on member states to fund the bits and pieces that are missing, to fund the bits and pieces that are actually of particular interest to your country. And we would encourage that. So I think with that, I'll draw it to a close, Mr. Chair, and we can open for discussion. As you have noted on the previous segment, this has already been the subject of a consultation process. So we would expect to move towards the conclusions pretty quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. Anyway, if there are any remarks, proposals, interventions virtually, if this is not the case, then please let's go ahead to the conclusions and recommendations.
If you could put the conclusions and recommendations on the screen, that would be great. And just scroll down. Okay, we'll come back to that one in a moment. Paragraph 25 is really the conclusion. Pardon me? Yeah, I was just looking at the conclusion. Okay. After the discussion, the committee noted the Pathways to Sustainable Energy Program concept note and called on member states to provide extra budgetary resources to enable continuation of the Pathways program, including its second phase with its sub-regional focus, early warning system, and training in the use of its analytical architecture, including the carbon neutrality project with its review of technologies, business models, and additional economic sectors. I'll continue reading, but there's a mistake here. And mandated the Secretariat to continue raising funds from other partners and the global tracking framework to track progress of EC member states to the energy-related objectives of the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Climate Agreement. The mistake that I stumbled on is where it says, and mandated the Secretariat to continue raising funds from other partners. I would suggest that that phrase be moved to a subsequent sentence and just say, the committee mandated the Secretariat, and it would be removed completely from that sentence. The structure would then be more sensible. Could you highlight in the middle of that sentence, and mandated the Secretariat to continue raising funds from other partners, to move that to the end of the paragraph as a new sentence, and to start the sentence saying the committee mandated. Oh, nope. That one goes somewhere else, yes. Okay, it's still part of the same paragraph. You used to put paragraph period after. What I'd like to do is move the word and mandated the Secretariat to continue raising funds from other partners. Simply that phrase to be moved to the end of the same paragraph, and to start that phrase with the committee mandated. Yes, perfect. With that, it looks, Mr. Chair, can I call on the Russian Federation? Russian Federation.
Thank you, first of all, for all the work done under the Pathways project so far, program so far. I would like to propose just one addition to this paragraph, because basically the last part, which we are now moving or changing, basically echoes the beginning of the paragraph and seems sort of redundant here. While the preference would be, like, I'm looking at the original text, and preference would be to stop after and additional economic sectors, because I don't see actually the need to mandate the Secretariat to continue raising funds as long as the document already calls on member states to provide extra budgetary resources. So the fundraising part is already here, we're just duplicating it. And sort of to reflect the idea that there also may be some other contributors apart from the member states community, would simply can be reflected by adding, like in the second line of this paragraph, called on member states and other partners to provide extra budgetary resources. So with that, we'll take out the additional burden from this paragraph. And the last part of the paragraph regarding the tracking framework to track progress of the EC member states of the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement, we actually already have it. So we're not creating anything new here. There is a framework to track progress under the 2030 Agenda, which is established by the 2030 Agenda itself, as well as the Paris Agreement. So I also don't see the necessity to include any language envisaging some framework, as long as it's already exists, as long as it already exists out there. So yes, that would be the current proposal as we see the paragraph 25 is on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Your language change on the resourcing side makes it much clearer. So maybe you can come and help us with our language elsewhere. I'd like to come back on the global tracking framework. We are solicited by the UN system in New York annually to prepare a UNECE regional report. And we've always done that on a massive shoestring. We don't have resources for it. The first year we were given, I think, $180,000, and we were able to bring somebody in to prepare the regional report. Ever since then, the only contributions we've been made have been thanks to the Pathways program. So a lot of the materials that were there allowed us to assemble the language that allowed us to produce the report. But it's been stitching things together. It's not an existing funded activity. And that's why it's been included here. If you'd prefer that we continue that way, we will definitely be needing funding for the Pathways program, but we would continue with that approach. Thank you.
Russia.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, our intention here is not to take out the language which is important for you in terms of your fundraising and work with New York. Also, like with this explanation, I can agree keeping this text, but I think the placement should be somewhere else, because otherwise it seems that part of the Pathways program is basically supporting the drafting of the report on the EC progress on Agenda 2030, which is not the case. It's a part of a larger process which goes apart from the Pathways program. So probably there is a better place for these two lines in the text, but I'm leaving it up to you. If you want to leave it here, then it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If we can come back with a proposal of where to put it, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Please.
Thank you. And if we have time, if not, please shut me up. I will not comment on the text as I'm not the member state representative, but I would like to bring out an element that I think is important and that will come up at COP26 on the third day. It addresses financing, and it is about sustainability standards to be reported to the capital market for them to assess the opportunities and risks that the environmental risks and the policy risks represent for their investments. This can be illuminated by aggregating the projects at the enterprise level, which is what the International Financial Reporting Standards Board, supported by the Financial Stability Board and IOSCO, is doing. But they are also looking for a view on how the opportunities and risks look seen from the jurisdictional perspective. And the difference between the enterprise and the jurisdictional perspectives are, of course, that the countries see 100% of the activities. The enterprises see their share if they are listed on the stock exchanges. So there is a need somewhere to contribute to their information by providing data that is aggregated at the jurisdictional level and that can illuminate the opportunities and risks that the capital market is facing. So this is a perspective that is important, and I think that the UNECE, through its instruments and structure, can contribute to that. But it is perhaps food for thought more than a comment to the texts of the conclusions. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the comment. I think we will have a later stage, also this financing issue on our agenda. Maybe it's an opportunity to discuss it, if it should be covered by UNECE or if it's already covered by all this work on taxonomy and related questions. Okay, then we could, if you agree, come back to point number 23, under agenda item 4. This was a request by European Union, and now we have the wording. So the question is if this is a text which can be accepted by all.
If you like, I read it out. The committee requested that for new work areas, such as the development of the UNFC hydropower specifications or normative instruments for sustainable production, distribution, and consumption of gas, an analysis of the needs and added value of such work within UNECE be explored before launching such new initiatives.
Russia.
Thank you. I'm afraid that we won't be able to accommodate this language since, frankly, we all know how hard it was to agree on the strategic review itself, and it took us quite an effort to sort of reach the acceptable balance there between the interests. So I would rather leave the paragraph 23, the only paragraph dedicated to the strategic review, the way it is drafted. Otherwise, we are basically reopening again the long and really like exhausting discussion on which specific areas to address and how to address them. So, yeah, the preference would be just to keep paragraph 23 and close the section there. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments? EU?
Yes, thank you, dear colleagues. I just want to provide a little bit more background. In most new areas, we actually didn't forget to consider developing, for example, on methane management and other areas. These are the only two areas where we didn't. And while in principle, we don't disagree with those areas, and I'm open to change the language to make that clear, we want to make sure that we are not developing some parallel initiatives as we believe that actually we didn't look sufficiently into detail on into what is being done elsewhere and what is actually necessary to be developed within UNECE. Otherwise, I concur with the Russian Federation that we did strike a good compromise, I think, with the strategic review, and it is in no way meant to actually undermine the result. I actually also asked for the floor concerning the tracking, the tracking under agenda point 6, or the sustainable pathways. And I have a question. It seems that it is relevant, the global tracking framework, to track progress within UNECE. And so my understanding just, is it that, are we asking to raise funds for the global tracking, or for the pathway to also contribute to it, which would actually seem quite logical and then maybe could be explained better. It wasn't actually clear from the original text what we are referring to when we talk about the global tracking framework. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe first to start with the last point, Scott.
Yeah, thank you for that comment on the global tracking framework, and it is an excellent comment. In fact, the global tracking framework process is one that has 3, maybe even 4 now, custodian agencies that develop a report annually. The World Bank, DESA, Statistics Department, and IEA. I think the 4th one is then IRENA is involved. They develop the global reports. They share with us the statistics that they have, and that we're asked to develop regularly a report on the UNECE region, looking at more of a close dive at a sub-regional basis at some of the results. And it's to contribute to the tracking of progress towards SDG 7. Well, you've got them here, the 2030 Agenda in Paris. We have found a very strong connection to pathways because we're working with countries to explore pathways to sustainable outcomes. And that does mean understanding fully your starting point. So both statements are correct. There is a process driven by New York that's underway that we participate in, and we've been doing it on a shoestring up to date. On the other hand, there is a logical connection between what we're doing on pathways and the contributions that we would be making to the global tracking framework. My sense is that there would be a connection, but I think we can find language that reflects pretty much what I've just said. I don't know if I've responded to it. If anybody who's made an intervention would like to come back. Thank you.
So my understanding was that in principle, it is agreed upon to look for funding for this activity. Maybe we have it at another separate place, and maybe also to have a little bit more reference to the regional contribution, so that there's not this misunderstanding that we do funding for global activities. Okay. Fine. Yeah, and then the concerning the other topic that was now on the 23rd, 23, yeah. So this is about synergies and to avoid duplication of work and this more or less is relevant for everything what we are doing. So maybe a solution could be not to focus is on just one area, as here the, for example, distribution and consumption of gas, but make it a general request concerning this list of 16 activities. So I think in principle it should be clear. So we should do it, of course, to avoid any wasting of resources here. So question is if you can leave it, or if it's necessary to have such a remark, or if you should put it at another place.
Thank you. Okay, I got it. Thank you, Chair. I think the original intention behind the proposal was to specifically say that there might be duplication in some areas. And if you generalize it, to me, it just doesn't make sense. Because, I mean, anyway, before we launch any new initiative, the first thing we do is just to see whether it has the value added. I mean, that's what we are paid for here. So you're just basically stating the obvious facts here, just saying that the committee, whenever a committee is starting something new, we have to make sure that we need it. So I don't think like it actually has any value added for the text, frankly, because this is exactly as you said, that's how we operate here. So I would prefer, again, just to keep the text focused and leave it as it is with paragraph 23. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Scott? Then European Union, would you just make an additional remark regarding this point, or should we discuss it offline?
Thank you, Mr. I'm very happy also to discuss it offline. Just to clarify, we would be happy to actually delete the reference to the 2 items that we found in the strategic review that actually didn't contain this this safeguard. All the other new items actually did contain that we will consider and then potentially launch it, and hence the insistence for us to have that comment. We can make it general and also actually add there to be more for clarity that it is also to avoid duplication. So happy to make it more general to accommodate all concerns and to refer to the duplication as suggested by the chairman, and happy to also discuss offline with the concerned parties. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Scott will manage during lunchtime to come to a solution. Russia again.
Thank you. Well, I'll be also, of course, happy to discuss it offline, but I think it would be pretty difficult since we're in Geneva and the EU colleague is not here. But I mean, anyway, it's just a joke. I'm just saying that I'm trying to speed up the thing here and consider as a way forward to include just a reference into the paragraph 23 and say that requested the groups of experts to reflect the strategic review in their future work plans and programs of work, including with the intention to avoid duplication and ensure value added to the initiatives.
Okay,
And
thank you for this pragmatic
that would reflect the idea.
proposal. I think it works. EU is fine with you as well? Lucy, can you hear us? Can you agree with this?
Yes, I think that would be a good way forward. We can maybe look a little bit at the fine tuning, but that would work for us.
Okay, great.
And if we can actually including, yeah, there is the reflect. Okay, yeah, that works. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So then I think we are through the agenda, through the recommendations for agenda item 5 as well. And so we can come to an end with the morning session. So thank you very much. So we are absolute in time. Thank you also to the interpreters for the support this morning. And then I would like to close the session and we will continue here in the room at 3 p.m. Thank you.